Amanda, thanks for coming today. I really appreciate you being here. This is the first of many agent spotlight series that we're going to do as a part of just agent awareness, what buyers can expect, what agents can expect that are maybe looking to get into the business. So I'm going to pepper you with some questions, and the idea is you just give me what you got, unfiltered. You got some of the questions maybe 30 minutes in advance, so not a lot of prepared time, which is a good thing because I want your raw responses more than anything. So, I mean, first of all, I guess tell the audience a little bit about who is Amanda Greene. Who are you? What do you do? How long have you been a real estate agent? Let me know all that.
Okay. My background is sales. I used to own a used car lot for 15 years. So I have been in the background of dealing with clients and sales and finance for the last 15 plus years. And I also used to work for Dun & Bradstreet as a operations manager. So I have been in the finance field 20 plus years easily. I have been a realtor for approximately 2.5 years. Received my license in December 2019 and affiliated in January 2020, right before COVID. So
Fun.
interesting time to get started. Yes.
Yeah, I feel like when, we look back on this period of history, it's not often that I think we can sit back and realize like these are the things that will be, in a history book, in a science book, in all sorts of books. And, I mean, we look back and think about what must life have been like during that time in certain periods of history. And I think generations from now, people will look back on this time and wonder how did people operate? How did people live through something like this? But so and becoming a realtor during such a pivotal time. I mean, we've gone through transitions in this industry of not being classified as essential in certain parts of the country, being classified, but not being able to show homes physically. We had to resort to virtual open houses, virtual showings, all sorts of things that really changed the way our business is running. I mean, how did you kind of create your business during this time? I mean, what were you looking at? What did you have to address as a new agent, kind of coming up in the real estate world during COVID?
Considering I did not have a previous basis, this is like norm to me. So wearing a mask, driving my own car, having someone follow you, making sure you have booties in the car and you have a sanitizer, spraying the house when you leave. That's like a norm because I didn't have any other basis. Now I don't have to do as much of that. Sometimes I still have to wear booties and sometimes I still have to wear a mask, and they still follow me. So no one's riding in my car. So that's one liability that I don't have to worry about that a lot of people did in the past. And also, I've just got to be cognizant of someone following me and not drive too fast. So make sure that they know where they're going.
Yeah.
The only time I've ever had somebody really ride in the car is a friend that I've shown houses to or relatives I've shown houses to. So that's different than a stranger or more someone that's more of a client I'm just meeting.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, some of that was brought about with COVID, but so much of that, is a great safety measure that we may never really go back to that type of process of, hey, jump in my car and and go there. But I mean, what do you see? So you're a realtor, you're serving what area? What areas do you service right now?
It feels like everywhere, but it's primarily the triad, even though I deal with Burlington, Woodford, Clemens, Huffstown, Seagrove, Asheville, Liberty, every surrounding areas, So a lot, Thomasville, Lexington. I actually got a house under contract in Lexington. So my territory is extremely wide because my clients are a different sphere, a lot of referrals. So I try to keep them as my client and not have to actually refer them to someone else. So as long as it's within an hour's drive, I try to keep them as a client.
So why do you feel that's important? I mean, because I operate in a very similar way, right? Is I don't want to necessarily refer it out if I don't have to, right? So why do you feel though that that's an important part of your business? Why do you operate that way?
Especially my referrals, and referrals are people that have been referred to me from a previous client. I want them to have the same customer service I gave my client and not have I'm not going to say another agent won't give them that, but I don't know. That's an unknown. And that unknown kind of concerns me at times because I'm extremely, I'm a good researcher. So I do a lot of research on properties and I make suggestions to my clients in regard to certain properties and at certain times. And if you're not timely, you miss out on a good opportunity. And I don't know if another agent would feel the same way if I refer them.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's tough to build
balancing that
network of people that know how to research and communicate in the way that you do. Your sister is a real estate agent,
right,
in the Charlotte area, right? So
and I'm going to refer somebody to her.
So it's nice to have that understanding at that level, where you can hold each other accountable on the back end of things as well. But so you mentioned a wide area, right? I mean, that there's a lot of drive time there, a lot of windshield time. I mean, what are you doing that keeps you busy or keeps you like what's your go-to, like when you're in the car, when you're driving? I mean, like going from one area of the triad to another. What are you doing?
Typically, I try to schedule a lot of things at the same time. So if I have some personal business to handle, I try to schedule that at the same time I'm doing these long drives. So I'm stopping either on my way to the appointment or on my way from return of the appointment. So I kind of gauge it, but I'm not just wasting time doing the run. So I'll kind of move my appointments around to a day I know I need to be in the area for something else. If I have to go to the office, if I have an appointment, like a meeting at the office, or if I have something with their association, or if I'm doing a ball game that night, those are the days I try to kind of go a little bit further out. And then on my way back home, I make my stops.
There you go. I love it.
You can't just go out there and not. And sometimes what I do is if I don't have anything scheduled, I'll go visit my old clients just to say hello.
There you go. Yeah, we had when I was first getting started as a loan officer and calling agents all day, every day, right? I mean, that's the name of the game is
exactly,
only way to get more buyers is to have more agents, right? I mean,
dialing for dollars.
That's right. Dialing for dollars, whatever we want to call it. But it never ceased to amaze me when I'd call agents that have been in the business for maybe 20 plus years. And they'd say, I'd call and say, what are you doing? They're like, oh, I'm just in Ross, or I'm just in, whatever store shopping for something. I'm like, why? It's the middle of the day. Like, let's work. But we do have to take care of personal things as well, from time to time. But going back to that large geographical area that you mentioned, and you talked about being a researcher, I mean, what are you finding that's happening in the market in your area that maybe could impact home prices, or just the overall housing market right now? What are you seeing? What's your crystal ball tell you?
I don't know what my crystal ball is telling me, but right now they're clearing a lot of land to build. In my particular area where I currently live, Asheboro, they don't have a lot of houses. We have less than 19 houses on the market. And that range is anywhere from 1.6 million down to 80,000. And there's not a lot in between. With 19 houses, there can't be. So what I'm finding is they're going to have to build. A lot of people are not moving. And then they're also bringing a lot of industry to this area. We got the mega site coming, which is less than 20 minutes from me. So this area is going to grow. They've got the Zoo Parkway that they just finished a couple of years ago that takes you directly to the zoo, and they've got to build that area up. So we have a lot of areas that need more homes, and you don't have but 1 or 2 builders in the area. And now I'm seeing a few more individual builders starting to build more. We have a new community coming in the western area of Asheboro that's building like 20 houses, and they're going to be under $300,000, but our median price is lower than most because of this rural area, and we have a lot of manufacturing versus corporate jobs.
Sure. Yeah. And that's such an interesting thing too. And you've got to see that a lot with your sister also being in Charlotte, of what a truly different makeup there is, right? I mean, when we're looking in Charlotte at average homes in excess of 350, right? I mean, and we still have limited inventory, but it's a different range, different in all aspects of jobs, education, all different things happening in such a close proximity, all things considered. You know, I mean, it creates a really crazy thing. So in the Triad area that you're serving, and you talked about 19 homes with such a vast difference with prices. I mean, in one person's price range, that means there could be maybe 1, maybe 2 homes that are even available. So what do you tell your buyers? Like, what do buyers, if they're looking to buy in a market right now, what do they really need to consider when purchasing a home? Like, what's the education that you deliver to your clients that goes behind getting them prepared for maybe the patience or what have you that's going to be involved in this housing market?
What I usually tell my clients, if they're not extremely liquid, I tell them to wait for a house and allow it to be on the market at least 6+ days, maybe 10. Do not look at houses that just hit the market or just listed. Well, you can look at them, but unless you're extremely liquid and can put a lot of due diligence down, you're probably not going to get it, especially an A+ house. If it's a B+ house and you're willing to do a little work like painting, cosmetics, that kind of thing, you might have an opportunity to buy it. But now people are starting to do second looks at B+ houses.
Sure.
And if you're FHA, you can't go but so far on a B+ house. And so I'm telling them to go drive by the neighborhood, check out the area. Let's not go have me showing you a house that you're not going to like the area. So I have a lot of clients that do drive-bys, and then they'll go, well, Amanda, I really didn't like the area, so it's not even worth it. That will stop them from being frustrated when they look on the internet and they say, oh, I like this house, but when you ride by it, you didn't like the house. So let's do that first. And then kind of determine what area you want to be in, but don't have it so where the point you can't be flexible in the area. I have one gentleman right now, he only wants to live in one section of Asheboro. And I'm like, but Asheboro doesn't have that many houses. And now you're waiting for a build that you may be competing against a bunch of other people.
Sure.
He's not that liquid. So it's his choice, definitely his choice. And I've already talked to the builder and the agent representing, and they said that the houses would not be available for 6+ months. So we don't know what the market's going to look like in 6+ months.
Yeah. And when you say liquid, you mean available cash or money to put down as a down payment, due diligence?
Yes.
Okay. Gotcha. And when you're talking about due diligence money or anything like that, because obviously that has been a true evolving topic in our housing market of how much is good enough, right? What does that conversation look like for your clients in terms of how much of a due diligence or earnest money should somebody be putting down?
When we start having that discussion, I start telling them that if they walk away from the house, they'll lose it. If they close, they keep it. I said the only way you get it back is if the material breach, and that's typically not happened. No, I haven't seen that happen but once. But I also say that if you put this kind of money down, whatever it is, it's an indication of how serious you are in making sure you close. So the higher it is, the more serious you are making sure you close. I said, I'm not in all cases, but especially if a house has been on the market for a day or two, that's a determining factor as well. So I had a client in particular that was looking at a house and said, well, if you go over the price, will it appraise? I said, you can do an appraisal addendum and be willing to pay the difference up to a certain amount. I said that your down payment. I said, looking at this house, I get them to look through the crawl spaces. I get them to look on top of the roofs, going to the attics. I said, what would make you walk away? And I said, if you don't see anything that will make you walk away, put what you feel comfortable putting down, however much that can be.
That's important. Yeah. I mean, what a great concept to talk about, walking around and understanding, because otherwise I think you could end up in a position where any little thing that goes wrong or triggers them could then have them say, you know what, I can't do it, because they're putting so much into it that it can create this anxiety and this fear of that process. So I appreciate that. I want to segue just a minute here, but before we do that, I mentioned to you earlier, I've got these random pod decks, and they're all sorts of questions in here. I've shuffled them up. I'll shuffle them again, so I have no idea what this question is going to be. And I'm going to roll it out here, and I'm going to ask this question, and it's, which talent would you most like to have?
I would probably say better, or I guess I almost want to say a better salesperson. I don't consider myself a salesperson. I consider myself fulfilling a need. And I sometimes think that I don't want to be pushy, and I don't want to be pushy, but maybe be more persuasive.
Okay. Yeah.
Extremely persuasive. That's the word I want to use, persuasive.
There you go.
I'm probably more reasonable or logical. So my conversation reflects that. It's not very persuasive. Because I'm like, this is a 30-year commitment, potentially. And some people say I buy a house for the next 5 to 7 years, but you could potentially still be in it for 30 years. So when people are thinking of this big of a commitment, I want them to understand what they're really doing versus pushing and persuading them to, I probably have more sales if I did that, but, but to be more persuasive and making sure that I close the deal. But I don't feel necessarily comfortable with that. If I felt comfortable doing it, then yes, I'd like to be more persuasive.
There you go. I love it. And it probably comes from the organizational type of job roles that you had prior to even becoming a real estate agent, right? Yeah. I mean, a lot of the other jobs, right, is very customer choice, customer focused, customer led, organization led, making sure we're addressing needs and wants. And that can actually be a really good thing, because then you're making sure we're not solutioning too quickly. I feel like some folks that are extremely persuasive, right, and lack the customer choice aspect of things, any problem that you throw out, you immediately go into addressing that, not understanding that sometimes we need to peel the layers of the onion back a little bit to understand root causes, root needs, those types of things. So adding that to your tool belt, I think is an awesome thing. But I think the foundation of what you have is it's incredible. And I just love working with you on that. But let's transition a little bit. Realtors, if you are a new realtor, or if you were a new realtor starting out, what would you tell an agent today getting started? And this would be a great viewpoint as somebody that's 2.5 years in. What would you go back and either tell yourself or tell a new agent on what to focus on when starting to climb the ladder of real estate success, right? What is that advice?
I would say get as much training and foundation as possible. Don't be I understand that we all need to make money. And I think that was more my motivation. Then getting a lot more of the foundation I probably could have gotten. I think that foundation is, if once you get it, is very solid. I have a lot of understanding of the business and I do have a lot of training, but I don't have as much as I think I should have had. And I'm learning through trial and error, which is good, but also can be bad because I'm catching my mistakes as I go through it. And the training I think is extremely important. So if you decide to strike out on your own, or if you decide to go with one of these agencies that is not as hands-on, you have the foundation. And you're not just making money and leaving a lot of mistakes on the table. You have the foundation to clear your mistakes as you go along, as you find them. Without
So if you
knowing what you're looking for, without the training, you don't know.
if you had one or two things that you said, I need training on this right out of the gate, what are those maybe one or two things where you say, because there's so, and I say that because there's so much that it can be drinking with a fire hose, right? And it's so what's maybe one or two starting blocks to say this, if nothing else, just make sure you start here.
The contract, the 2T, offer to purchase. That contract has so much language in it that I think, and it's changed since I've been in the business, I think once or twice. And that language is important, knowing that, and not just breeze over it, but read it and then go through it and then ask questions as you go through it to make sure you're representing your client properly. And then knowing the attached addendums that you need to include. I tell my client, ask for anything, and I will try and find a way to make sure we can put it in the contract. I'm like, all they can do is tell you no. I learned that from a judge when I went to court one time, and I was doing a civil case, and I said, well, I didn't know I could ask for that. He said, ask me for everything. I'll tell you when you can have it or can't. So I tell my clients the same thing. That's one of the most valuable lessons I've ever learned.
Yeah. I learned that lesson at one point in my life too.
And if you put it in the contract, they can either say yes or no. But if you don't ask for it, you already got it. You already have a no. So let's ask.
Sure. Yeah, that's such an awesome outlook, is if you don't ask, it's already a no, for sure. So when we talk about kind of the sales process of a realtor, right? We've got to determine lead sources. Where are we going to go and get business, right? And oftentimes, what as a mortgage lender, what my viewpoint is, and maybe you share this viewpoint, maybe it's different, but what I hear a lot when I'm communicating with newer agents is, congratulations, you have your real estate license, you've paid your dues, and you have a pulse. Mm-hmm. You are active, right? You are able to go and sell something, right? A license and a pulse, right? That's what we need. But then the question comes of, but where and how? And so what is my lead source? How do I generate leads? And then how do I convert those leads from a lead to a client, right? So where are your lead sources coming from right now? And I know you mentioned kind of your sphere, your center of influence as well a little bit. So certainly want to touch on that, but maybe what are they all coming from your center of influence, or kind of what's your business makeup in terms of how much is maybe coming from your center of influence versus any other sources, and what are those sources?
Well, I would say that, and it varies during different times of the year. So right now, my sphere of influence is making about 75% of what I've closed. And then at different times of the year, it could be my referral base. And referral base is an organization through my company that I get referrals that can make up 75%. So it's just different times of the year, it makes up different percentages. I will say that people understanding that you're a realtor, so getting out there and actually socializing is important, so they don't forget you. When you're at family functions, because I missed actually a family function and they forgot to even call me for a listing. But when you're at family functions, remind them that you're a realtor, when you're at any social event, remind people you're a realtor, give out your cards. And if you get with a company that has a decent referral base, that's helpful because then those people will refer others. Because I've had clients that have referred. I have one guy that I got as a referral almost 2 years ago, and he's referred two people to me already. And then one of those people have referred another to me. So that's how those referrals can build if they've had a good experience with you. And I try to keep in touch with them, send them a card occasionally, send them a thank you gift if I definitely get a closing or a referral, just to keep them in the forefront of their minds. If I see them out, we have a conversation. Sometimes, like during the holidays, I have taken cakes over to people, slices of cake, just and put my my information on the top of the container, letting them remember that, hey, I'm still a realtor if you have anyone. So it's just a constant reminder. So I do a lot of, I guess, subtle marketing.
Yeah. So why cake? Why cake?
My mother's a baker.
Oh my gosh. I haven't received
so a lot of times at
closings from you.
I will do that. So a lot of times at closings, if we're talking out and they'll say, "Oh yeah, I like cake or whatever," and I say, "What's your favorite?" And they'll tell me, and I'll bring them a cake for part of the closing.
Oh so, yeah. My gosh, I love it. So slices of cake. Now you said you put your information on it. What are the critical things that you make sure are on the information? Right? Is there a tagline, a slogan? Is there something that you put on there, or is it name?
It's my name and number.
Phone number. Okay, very cool.
That's my name and right now, and I'm thinking of a slogan. Let's go green.
I love it. I love it. It's timely, right? I mean, there's a lot of conscious people in the world, right? And so when we talk about that, and it's your last name, right? You just have to add the E. But yeah, I mean, it makes great hashtags. It makes great all sorts of things. So, all right. So center of influence referrals yes. make up the majority of the business. Now, you mentioned when you go to a networking event, when you go to a family function or something, you're like reminding them that you're a realtor. How does that conversation come naturally?
Well, typically I'm a listener. I can be a talker, but I'm learning to listen more. So that was part of, I will say this much. Any new realtor, after you get some foundation, go to a ninja class, something that gives you a basis of how you should market your day. I mean, how you should plan your day. Planning is important, making sure you're just not out scrolling, not have a plan of how you should plan your day. So with that being said, so I sit and I listen to my friends and my family or someone have a conversation, and they'll talk. A lot of times it goes to the houses or what they're doing or the fact that they're having to move or they are thinking about changing locations. And I'm like, really? I said, oh, have you thought about buying or are you thinking about buying? And so then we start giving that conversation. Well, I don't know how my credit is. I said, well, I can help you. So I give them my card and I said, give me your information and I can give you a couple of lenders. Why don't you call them, reach out to them? I said, I don't have to know any of your personal business. You can just talk to them, have a conversation, see if there's anything you need to do. I said, because if you start doing the work, that might not be necessarily what you have to be doing.
Sure. So when you talk about it, right, having the conversation, generating the conversation is one part of it. And then how do you convert that from a conversation into an active client, right? How do we transition that, right? How do we get to the next step?
A lot of times if they're serious, and people are serious at different times in their lives. Some people are required to move immediately. So I want to go ahead and get them in touch with the lender as soon as possible. So then we have the financial conversation. Do you have a lender you're dealing with? Do you have a bank that you're banking with? Would you talk to them? Then they start giving me a little bit more details about their credit situation. And then I said, well, I have some lenders that can try and help you with that, especially when it comes down to money situations. They don't have as much money down as they think they need. I tell them about programs. So then I start giving them your information and maybe another lender. I said, talk to both of them, see what you like, what you don't like, and see who gets back to you. And I said, a lot of it is online. So be prepared to start uploading your information. And so they start talking. And
No.
then they start talking. And then when they get that pre-approval, like I gave young lady today that you gave me, yay. She's like, thank you. So we're going to look at a house tonight.
There you go.
I told her, be prepared to start sending a bunch of docs, start giving them to me.
There you go.
That, I think once they get that letter and I've helped them facilitate getting that letter of approval, I think that helps a lot.
Yeah.
Of calling me back.
So getting a, let me rephrase this. Oftentimes when we give somebody homework, like call a loan officer, you're asking somebody to call about the largest check they may ever write in their lives. Sometimes it's the only time they're going to write it, and sometimes it's the only time they're going to write it for the next 6 to 10 plus years. So that creates a lot of anxiety for people when they're trying to determine how to do that. And that might mean there's a lot more need for follow-up to kind of gently usher someone along in the process, right? Whether that be follow-up because you provided the number to me, or follow-up in the sense that they preferred to be the one to call on their time. So what are your most tactical methods that you're using as a part of your follow-up, right? Is it predominantly text message, phone calls? Like what are your main methods of follow-up and why?
It varies based upon the situation. Like if I am meeting a client and I still, like, I usually do a one show without pre-approval, and then after that we have a conversation after the showing. Because if they're really interested, I'm like, well, you can't get this house until you have pre-approval. It's best to have it in hand if you want to make an offer.
Sure.
And then I try to find out what's going on. Have you called them? No. If they start giving me excuses, I'm like, I need to know if you're serious about moving forward, because if you're not, I can be here whenever you need me to, but I'm not going to communicate with houses because you're going to lose out on them, especially most of the price points I'm in.
Right.
I'm like, you can look at them, you can enjoy, like the house, but if you're not pre-approved, there's no opportunity to even try to get it.
Sure.
So I usually have that kind of, it's probably a little more stronger language than, and it's all according to how I deliver it. And so a lot of times if they feel like if they don't understand what documents they need, like the young lady who just got the approval, she was like, well, I gave her play by play what I thought you needed. And from understanding what Jeff said. And she was like, well, can you help me? So I've been through people's paperwork. I'll fax them, I'll download them, I'll send them. I said, give me everything you have. And I'll do it. I'll go through it and be like, well, I think this is what he needs. And if I have everything, if I'm missing something, I can send it. And I tell them, give it to me. I'll download it. I'll send it via email. That way I know they have it. They can't say they received it by fax or didn't receive it by fax. So I'm a little pushy.
That's good.
I'm a little pushy.
Okay. We'll call it persuasive, even though you said that.
Okay, and that aspect, I'm probably pretty much that, because my background is finance. So right. I'm a little probably more persuasive in the financial side of things, because that's what I'm used to.
Yeah,
especially
and
doing loans
for folks that are listening, Jeff is my assistant. So you know who that person is, or that name. So the last question I want to wrap up with here is, what's a success story when you're out when you were a new agent, or even now, and you're prospecting, whether that be door knocking, cold calling, whatever it is, as you're trying to drum up leads, what's a success story that sticks out in your mind that just when you think back on that time, you're like, man, that was cool?
I had a client call me from a referral, and she was in New York. And we had talked, and she said, I don't want to spend more than $250. I said, okay. I said, when are you going to be in the area? So we planned a trip to meet. When I meet her, she is there with her husband, 4 sons. There was it might have been 3 sons and the daughter-in-law. So we're all in my conference room. And I'm like, okay, trying to do an interview as to what she really wants to do.
Sure.
She wants to move to Winston-Salem, she thinks. So we're having a conversation. I said, when do you want to plan to do this? So I'm trying to get some time frames, and I'm like, well, if you have a year or so, you might want to build. And so, you go through the conversation. So I put on the screen houses and options, and we talk about what they need, what their needs are, and everything else. And I said, well, here, let's just do some riding. So we decided to ride to a community in Clemens. So we
Which
were out there.
so we understand geographically, Winston-Salem to Clemens. What are we talking?
You're talking about 15 minutes,
Okay, all right.
12 to 18 miles, according to where it is. So this particular location was about 12 miles from the office. So it's right outside of Winston-Salem. So we drove to Clemens and we went to a model. I said, because I wanted them to get some hands-on of what, instead of looking at pictures. I said, let's put our hands on some material and let's see what we like. So we went to a model, walked in, they loved the model. So we looked at like 3 or 4 of the different types, but they loved the model. And so we found out that they're going to build the model about 6 months from then, and the prices. So we talked about it. They looked at it. We discussed it. And I said, well, think about it. Let me know. Because it's right outside the price point, about $130,000 outside the price point. And they said, okay. So they went home. They discussed it. I showed them other options because they were talking about something cheaper. They were like, no. Their daughter-in-law wanted me to look at other options. They said, no. They said, we want that one. Found out they were building the lot they wanted. They sold that lot out from underneath me. They bought the other lot. We closed the end of April. And they won't be moving down here for another year and a half.
Wow. So, I mean, $130,000 outside of their price range is not a small margin.
No.
How did we identify that was even possible?
They had a thought in their head, but financially they were stronger than they wanted to go. The husband was he did not want to spend over, he said, I'll go to 300. And I was like, okay. Then they got to 382.
So they imposed their own limit on themselves.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting thing as a home buyer. If you're listening, is I certainly want folks to understand that it's okay to tell your real estate agent what your maximum budget is, and then also what you're comfortable doing.
Right.
Because we can feel oftentimes like, okay, if I'm going to go tell maybe a car salesman or something my max budget, they're probably going to find you that maximum car. It's a little bit different, a lot different when you're dealing with a real estate agent or a realtor. Is we're there to help you not only get into a home, but also to keep the home that you're in, which means that you have to be comfortable with the monthly payments, the out-of-pocket expense. So I think it's important to set limits like they did, but also for you as the agent that's helping them to understand, okay, what is that maximum, just so we're not, we might be able to act a little bit quicker of saying, okay, well, I know this isn't what we want to do, but it is there as an option. So,
and I did try to give them other options, but they didn't want them. So
it's like, say yes to the dress. When you said yes, you just got to move on.
Yes, because when
stop looking at other dresses, because you've already found the one.
Yes, and when they lost that first lot and they only had one more they were building, they said, we'll take it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And they're closing, or they've
already closed. They closed April the May the 10th.
Did they get cake?
Huh?
Did they get cake?
Yes, they did.
Then all is right in the world.
They got carrot cake.
Oh my gosh. My wife would love carrot cake. I do not prefer carrot cake.
They said they had choices and they chose carrot cake.
Carrot cake. I am like a straight, give me like the chocolatiest piece of cake on the planet. And the other thing is, I do love a red velvet cake, but I don't really like cream cheese frosting. And most of the time, carrot cake or red velvet comes with cream cheese frosting. So somebody had at one point made me a red velvet cake with, it was either a vanilla or like a buttercream frosting or something, and it was so good because I love the flavor of the cake, but just not that frosting. But anyway, Amanda, I so appreciate you joining me for this, and thank you for being here. I hope everybody that listens to this gets a lot of value out of it. So thank you so much for coming.
I hope they do too. Thank you. You're welcome.